clear that additional resources into the system does produce gains in academic achievement. And so logically, when you cut budgets, you are going to see reductions in pupil achievement. But I think there's an additional problem here. Most of the studies we look at the changes of small changes in expenditure and see what happens to pupil achievement. Here we're talking about a very sharp reduction over a limited period of time. So not only is that likely to lead to some reduction in pupil achievement, but on top of that, it's likely to have a very demoralizing effect on the teacher workforce. And other evidence from the US is very clear that teachers are a critical part of the system. And so if the budget cuts coming in the way that they have leads to a disengaged workforce and problems with teacher motivation, that is likely to have an additional impact on pupil achievement. And I think we should be concerned about that.
A recession that will lead to a reduction in the budget will harm students, will lower their performance, lower their cognitive tests in mathematics, in science, in English, in Spanish language in your case. So one should not shy away from these consequences. Maybe there is a way to mitigate, to minimize the negative effect, and maybe we'll talk about it, but one should be aware that there is no way you can cut 10-15% of the budget of schools and expect things to be the same as before.
So we know that if you cut resources, you're likely to have some negative effect on pupil achievement. But we also know that increases in expenditure have had most impact on the very early years and primary school. So if I was a policymaker, I would be trying to cut adult or higher education or even secondary education before I cut primary and early years. Obviously, ideally you wouldn't cut any, but given that some budget cuts need to happen, we want to make sure that we protect spending in the early years and in primary school. The other thing is that the evidence on class size doesn't suggest that small differences in class size make a huge difference to pupil achievement. So if I was a policymaker, I would be trying to cut budgets primarily by increasing the pupil-teacher ratio rather than by cutting teacher salaries.
So we see that the effect of how much time kids spend in school and how many hours they study in classroom mathematics or science is more important for students who come from deprived background, from families with low education, families with low income. The effects are stronger there than the effect on kids who come from affluent families, rich families. So perhaps Catalonia could cut the budget in a differential way. Schools that are mostly enrolled with deprived students, low-income families, should have a much lower budget cut than schools that have families from rich background.
I'm very cautious about looking at any particular individual system and saying, look, that's fantastic, we should all be doing it. But systems that do seem to be effective in terms of producing pupils with good achievement include Finland, for example, and many systems in Asia also produce children who have very good mathematics skills and other types of skills. So there are systems that seem to produce higher levels of pupil achievement. And if you had to go into the characteristics of those systems and you were looking for reasons for that, one would be, for example, in Finland, the status of teachers is very high. Interestingly, not necessarily the salary, but the status of teaching as a profession.
What lessons do we take from those countries to countries that do not do as well? So I think the different studies, when we look at specific inputs, tell us a little bit. For example, in Korea, kids stay in school from 9 in the morning to 6 in the evening, and then they go home and work until 11, or they even stay in school and work until 11 at night. So there's a lot of time devoted. And I think that my work and other people's work show that time is important. So in Korea, they found a balance between doing a lot of work in the classroom, in school, spending a lot of time, and perhaps with larger classes and much stronger discipline. No violence, no noise in the classroom. So that's their optimal package. In Finland, it's the quality of teachers. The teaching profession is very prestige, even though teachers are not getting paid very high. In Korea, the teachers are getting paid very high salaries. So in Finland, they found a difference. So I think for each country, there is kind of a social package of what can work in education. But I think the overall guiding rules is that most of the inputs that we think about are going to be productive almost in any country. Class size reduction, studying more hours in school, doing more homework is going to be useful. Pushing traditional methods, especially for disadvantaged children, is going to be very useful. All these things are going to work. So I think the countries that strive to improve their education should think about this.